For this project, students were assigned to choose a woman who currently works in the sport industry to research and interview. The woman had to be working full-time in the sport industry and could not be working on the sports side. I am a current student athlete at Georgia State University, so I decided to interview a woman who works closely with our beach volleyball program. Her name is Kelcey Roegiers. Kelcey Roegiers is the Senior Associate Athletic Director and the Senior Woman Administrator and Chief Diversity Officer. She heads into her 11th year at Georgia State University. Part of her job is to oversee the compliance, academics, strength and conditioning, life skills, and sports medicine departments. She serves as the Title IX Deputy Coordinator. She is also serving as sports supervisor for women's basketball, court volleyball, beach volleyball, men's soccer, and women's soccer. She previously had spent more than 4 years with the women's basketball program in an administrative role. She is also an ESPN Plus color commentator for Georgia State women's basketball television broadcasts. Roegiers has been involved with the Georgia State Athletic Department since her days as a student athlete. Roegiers competed for the Panther women's basketball squad as a 4-year letter winner and still ranks on several Panther top 10 charts, including assists, steals, free throws made, and three-pointers made. Roegiers earned her basketball degree from Georgia State in 2007 and followed with a master's in sports business administration in 2011. She is a graduate of the 1A Athletic Director Institute. The first required question asked was, do you think the glass ceiling exists in the sport industry? Why or why not? Roegiers does think the glass ceiling exists in this industry. However, she feels it is starting to shift. For example, you can see where shifts are happening in the NHL when the quartet of referees, Katie Guay and Kelly Koch, and linespersons Kendall Hanley and Kirsten Welsh became the first women to work an NHL-affiliated event. She thinks we are having breakthroughs in this ceiling because of where we're at as a society and the climate of where our country is at right now. There is a combination of two things that are causing this barrier to crack, in her opinion. The first being players. High school, collegiate, and professionals are being empowered to have a louder voice. The majority of professional and collegiate athletes are people of color. They are holding their ground on certain non-negotiables, and without these players, the white male owners of these teams wouldn't make the billions of dollars. The other component is the media. The media is bringing light to the deaths and social injustices happening in our country, and this is forcing owners to change. Both of these components are bringing about change in hiring more inclusively and bringing more diversity to the workforce. The second required question was, have you or someone you know come across the glass ceiling in the sport industry? Roegiers is sure there is someone she has personally known that definitely had to go through some hardships. She said to look at Maria Taylor, who is a color commentator for NBC Sports. She has worked for ESPN and the SEC networks and has gone through racial discriminations. An example of this was when her colleague, Rachel Nichols, suggested Taylor got a hosting assignment because of her race. The third required question was, since you have been working in the sport industry, have you seen the number of females seeking careers in the sport industry increase, decrease, or stay about the same? Why do you think that is the case? Roegiers thinks the number of females seeking careers in the sport industry has certainly increased. She thinks these numbers have increased for a couple of reasons. The first being the few women who have been able to break through the glass have done a great job in those areas. Whether it is the NBA, women's officials, or female athletic directors, they have done a really good job in their positions. The other reason she thinks these numbers have increased is because where we are at in society and understanding that we need equality. People are on the ship of equality right now, and women are getting more opportunities because that is where the movement is at in our country. The fourth and last required question was, what advice would you give to females who want a career in sports? The advice Roegiers would give to a woman who wants a career in sports is to go after it. She said she is the type of person who, if you want something, you need to speak up and let people know what you want. This is something she has had to learn over the years. She used to think that if you worked hard and kept your head down, you would get noticed. She thinks with her experience and from talking to other women that females don't do a good enough job of promoting themselves, expressing what we actually want, or giving ourselves credit/bragging on ourselves when we have done something well. You must celebrate yourself and let people know what you want in your career. It is important to tell the right people that can championship you, help you develop your skills in those areas for if or when an opportunity is to come along. She thinks it is important for women to find mentors and have it be a diverse pool of people who champion for you. There are still too many men making decisions, so women really need men to champion and be their mentors. The first question I asked was, has there ever been a time where you or a female you know been passed up for a job because they were not a male? If a male was given the job, was the female equally or more qualified? Kelcey stated, because these situations are very closed door, it is hard to say yes definitively. However, she still thinks they happen a lot. If they weren't so closed door and more people knew about it, they would have an HR nightmare. She could recall one situation where a male and female candidate were both equally qualified in her professional opinion. The male was given the job over the female. She couldn't say with 100% certainty that he was given the job because he was a male, but what she did know was that on paper, the white female and African American male had very similar resumes and experiences in the industry. The female had no children, whereas the male did. She said you could only speculate a lot on these things. Another prime example would be Becky Hammon in the NBA. She is more than qualified to be a head coach at some of these positions, and she is getting passed over. She is a great example of somebody who should have received a chance to be a head coach in the NBA, but she is getting passed over for men who have never been a head coach or even coached. Former NBA players who have never sat in a coaching seat before are getting jobs before her. The second question I asked her was, what sports have you played, and how did playing a team sport prepare you for this job? Kelcey describes that most of her life was just basketball, although when she was younger, she used to dance. She did clogging, tap, jazz, and ballet. However, once she switched to basketball, she never went back. She played a little bit of softball in her high school years, but knew where her scholarships were coming from, so she put more emphasis on basketball. She explains that sports has prepared her for her current and past jobs in a variety of ways. It teaches you organization skills, time management, how to work together as a team, and what's very crucial right now in the world, and not just in the sport industry, is being able to work with people from all different types of life. She stated that at least with basketball, it is a very diverse community from social economic status to race to education levels. Basketball, specifically where she came from, allowed her to work with a lot of different people and learn a lot about a variety of people. Kelcey is from St. Petersburg, Florida. This prepared her for her current job by allowing her to learn how to collaborate and work together with people from all different types of lives. She also stated that sports teaches us how to manage emotions, how to pivot, adjust, and move immediately. A great example of this was seen throughout COVID. The sport industry was one of the best at pivoting and moving to continue to play games. This is what we have done our whole life. In game strategies, we adjust and change our tactics based on what's happening throughout the game. Sports has taught her how to quickly adjust to situations when something has changed or is new. It has taught her how to work and change on the fly and be adaptable, which is a vital and useful skill in the workforce, especially in the sport industry. The third question I asked Roegiers is, do you think there's a double standard with women versus men in the workforce or on the field? Kelcey stated she does think there is a double standard, one of the main ones being managing emotions. For example, look at Serena Williams when she broke her racket. There are so many videos after these events that are happening of just comparisons. So there is a double standard out there. She does think it is more than okay for women in the workforce or on the field or court to show emotion and be passionate about what they do. But there is a certain level and line you shouldn't cross because of this double standard. Male employees and athletes are allowed to show intense emotions without the same backlash. They are celebrated and promoted for this kind of passion, whereas women get called hysterical and too emotional. Next, a question asked commonly to working mothers but rarely to fathers is, how do you juggle family life and work life? Roegiers said that when she was listening to someone talk the other day, They were mentioning integration. Kelcey stated, "This is absolutely what she does. There is no such thing as balance. It is all about the process of integrating. This starts with your leadership." She mentioned a prime example being the GSU's previous athletic director wouldn't allow employees to bring their children to work events without a babysitter. The current athletic director wants this program to be a family environment. When she can integrate them into what she does, it allows for a much healthier and effective work environment. GSU has fall conference meetings, and she is able to bring her wife and kids with her. That way, in her downtime or breaks, she can spend it with her family. She thinks this has been a crucial event for her kids to be on a college campus every day and expose them to different sports and people throughout their developing years. Kelcey does not think that there is a balance if you work in the sport industry, and it is crucial to do the best you can to integrate work and family life with what your leadership and bosses will allow you to do. Her current job has an excellent boss that allows for a great family atmosphere and for her wife and kids to come to as many conferences, practices, or games that they can. When asked how she got involved being a color commentator for GSU's women's basketball team, Roegiers stated, "It kind of fell into our lap. Before GSU did ESPN Plus, they were a part of the local school radio show. The sports information director for the team asked Kelcey, with her background in basketball, if she would be interested in helping with the radio show. She stated this was an uncomfortable position for her, but she feels that putting yourself in uncomfortable and new positions allows you to grow as a person, so she accepted this opportunity. This allowed her to see the game from a different lens. It is now mandatory for the basketball team to use ESPN Plus for all of their games, and it is a live broadcast with cameras and pregame shows." She stated the initial offer fell into her lap and it has grown since then, but they have asked her to stay on. Kelcey thinks she walks a line of a Charles Barkley or Shaq type of way of communicating. She says what people want to hear because that's the truth of it, with little filter, but then she has to remember she is still an employee of Georgia State. She must stay a little political and walk the line of filtered and unfiltered. Another big piece to this job is the homework. She stated, "In any sports commentating, whatever the sport may be, if you're going to be good at it, you really have to do your homework. You must break down scouting reports, know where players are from, and know their stories." An example of this was they had a past player who was forced to sit out a year because they were battling cancer, but came back. Knowing their stories and background takes time, and it is not just about commentating on really good plays. This makes you real, and she feels the people listening and watching want that. It is not hard to do, but it takes time and commitment if you want to do it right. She thinks trying to tell kids stories will make you better. Roegiers' answer to the question, "Do you feel women can coach men at a high level, and why do you think there aren't more female coaches in male sports?" was absolutely yes. And she doesn't think just at a high level, she thinks across the board that women can coach men. She stated, in her opinion, the higher coaching level you go, the more men appreciate having a female voice and different kinds of emotion that women bring to the table. A female coach brings a more detail-oriented style, and she believes they are better listeners. She went back to Becky Hammon and said, "If you strip back the politics and the stigmas that have been around women in coaching a male sport, Hammon is an ideal candidate from knowledge to playing and winning championships at the highest level." She stated, "From listening to the San Antonio Spurs, they love having her on staff. They love talking with her and listening to her. She thinks women can coach at a very high level and that some men would prefer having a female coach. But where we are at as a society, it will take a certain city, as Hammond mentioned, to afford a woman the opportunity, and they must do a really good job to be successful." This goes back to the film our class recently watched on Nicole Sherry. She was the first female to be hired on the groundskeeping staff for the Baltimore Orioles, and she was the fastest person to move up that industry to become the head groundskeeper with the least amount of experience. Kelcey stated, "The reality of it is women have a lot more to prove, and once they finally get the opportunity, they put in much more work, and they know there are a lot of other women looking to them." The last question I asked Roegiers is, "Do you think a person needs to be an athlete first in order to be a good athletic director?" Her response was, she does not think you need to be an athlete first. However, in her personal opinion, she thinks it will make you a better athletic director if you are a former student athlete. You don't have to be a starter just on the team because there are tangible things from being a student athlete that will help with this job. For example, this is not a 9-to-5 industry. So as a student athlete, there are times when you are driving back on a bus at 1 a.m. and getting home just to turn around and get up at 8 a.m. to go to class. She stated, if you have never experienced this before, sitting in the chair of an athletic director, she feels it would be very hard to relate to your student athletes. And that's what they are here to do, is help them. She thinks things you go through as a student athlete, like locker room conversations, in her opinion, will certainly make you a better athletic director, but you don't have to have that background. She also thinks that being a former student athlete and now in the chair she sits in, she can read the temperature of the room a lot better. For administrators that have never played a sport, they have a hard time knowing when and where to ask certain questions. You know from being an athlete and being in those environments how the coach is feeling and the emotions in the room. She said you would be surprised at how many administrators don't know how to read a room and the temperature of a person. For example, if a football program hadn't won a game in the past 4 weekends, it is not the best time to go into the coach's or AD's office and ask questions that are not pivotal to the success of our athletic department. Timing is everything. When asked about her career and respect from current student athletes, she feels that unless you have a pro title like the NFL, WNBA, AVP, or NBA, she doesn't think they really care. She thinks current student athletes are a little more spoiled when compared to past student athletes. The world is shifting and it is giving more empowerment and voices to younger people, and student athletes fall in line with that, and we are afforded more opportunities across the board.